I'm going to try this again because I really very much did blow it earlier today, trying to go live. And maybe I'll blow it again. I don't know. But this time I basically tried to record the video earlier today because I have some things I wanted to talk about and my audio wasn't working. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to test the audio and see if I can make sure that it's working. Since there's no one here, I want to be able to test it myself. Let's see. So I can hear myself. Okay. I can definitely hear lots of background noise. So I can hear myself. Yep, we're good. All right. So let's talk about the war in Iran. I have been very disturbed about some of the things that I'm hearing because I feel like we're not having the right conversations for something this serious. I watched portions of the interview with Tucker Carlson and and Ted Cruz. And I generally like Ted Cruz. I think he's a smart guy. In some ways, this was beneath his intelligence level as I've seen it. Now, I know a lot of people were very critical of, who were they critical of? Of Tucker Carlson. They were critical of Tucker Carlson, and they were kind of, talking about the way that he interviewed him. But that's kind of the way Tucker interviews. He's a very much gotcha interviewer. And so I wasn't really that upset about his tactics, even though I understand why someone might have a problem with it. What the problem that I had was that if you're going to vote, Tucker's a journalist. He can kind of do whatever he wants. He's eliciting information. And I think that one of the reasons that people were so critical is because they don't understand the information he was trying to elicit. When you are a journalist, you're trying to get information from people, and the information he was trying to get from Tucker or from Ted Cruz is, do you actually know enough about this to be beating these war drums? And clearly the answer is no. Now I open with that, but I want to talk about why that's the case. And let me see if I can get this title fixed so that because I want people to be able to actually find the video and see what we're talking about this evening. Let's see. I don't know how to change that, so hopefully I will just be able to make it into a video. Why can I not find them? And maybe it's not available. All right, let's talk about the law, the international laws as it relates to nuclear weapons. When you are, nuclear weapons are lawful. Let's start with that. So any person or any country, there is a process through the UN for a country to engage in the development of nuclear technology, nuclear energy, and nuclear weapons. So nuclear weapons are not illegal under international law. Oddly enough, actual nuclear bombs are illegal under Iranian law. Okay, so we don't have international bodies telling people what they can or cannot do as a country. It's up to them to do what they think is right, and if what's right for their country. And if there are bigger, more powerful countries in the world that decide that they don't like what they want to do and they want to stop them, well, they can try to stop them. And more or less, that's actually unlawful. If in the construct that we have, and you can decide whether or not you want to acknowledge or respect the international bodies. People are always talking about the rules-based international order and the rule of international law and things like that, but those are mostly advisory. They have sanctions power, and that's about it when it comes to trying to enforce what they do. But most of these international organizations, they're based on your consent to be a part of them. And if you don't consent to be a part of them, you don't go along with what they're doing, they have very little enforcement power. That's one of the reasons why even after there was a ceasefire resolution for Gaza, Israel did not cease fire. They just continue to go because there's not really a lot that they can do. And I will say that the sanctions mechanism that has been used, that's going to become less and less effective. It's already started to become less effective, but it will continue to become less effective as people have more invisible ways to transact and trade. So to the extent that it's already available, meaning that there are ways that you can trade without the US being able to detect it and say, you're being sanctioned, it's going to be less and less. So for those countries that are calling for all kinds of additional sanctions, it's not going to be effective in the long term. So nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, those are legal. There's an international body called the International Atomic Energy Agency. I believe that's what it is. And they have their inspectors. They go into countries that want to engage in nuclear energy, and they are there to make sure that it's safe, that they're not operating outside of what the rules are. They, have their own set of rules. And Iran was compliant with that. They have inspectors there. So what we're talking about here, before we get to the next step of, whether we should or shouldn't be going in, what is our authority to go in? Iran is engaging in exploration of nuclear technology, and they're doing it under the international law that's set. So we, as a larger country, and frankly, Israel as a smaller country, they've decided, nope, no, not going to do it. So you might be wondering, under international law, what is our right to neutralize what we find to be that threat? Well, any country under international law, depending on the degree of their power and their ability, has the right to defend themselves against a threat. And of course, we know that these threats are perceived threats unless someone else is struck first. In that case, were they, proceeding under a threat that was perceived against them? Now, I think there's a lot of reasons that countries end up in a war, but most of it's lies. But still, what we have is we have Israel so far, and on the periphery, the United States looking to break international law to prevent someone from doing something that is within the law. That's what we're dealing with here. So it's important to start with that. So when I hear people having conversations, and the conversation is the same almost everywhere, it starts with Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And no one ever asked why. It's just almost like you have to assume that there is a good reason, not a lawful reason, just a good reason. But what if China decided that they didn't want America to have the Panama Canal because they perceived it to be a threat? I mean, we already have a lot of the same people who think that we should be going to war in Iran because we need to stop them from having a nuclear weapon. Those very same people don't recognize that Russia perceived a threat within them. Well, Russia broke international law when they went in to Ukraine to carry out their special military operation. If you just look at it from pure sort of written law perspective. But the problem with international law as it is, I'm not even going to say it's a problem. I think if we applied it more fairly, it would work, because we don't want countries fighting with each other all the time. I think that from my view, most wars are civil wars, but I don't know that for a fact. So what you have is you have countries that are breaking international law to neutralize what they perceive as a threat. And unfortunately, perception is reality. And we don't get to say which reality is more real. But what I will say about Russia is that at least the reality that they were concerned with was right next door. And they laid it out. I didn't actually know a whole lot about this NATO encirclement thing. I didn't know that Russia had this concern. I never paid that much attention until the special military operations started. I think very possibly had more people in the United States and in Europe been aware of this history, that maybe we would not have been so quick to support that. Maybe we would have pressured our lawmakers to do something to make that situation less dangerous. Obviously, that would have been the more ideal situation. And so just like Ukraine can go around saying, we have a right to be in NATO if we want to, which is absolutely true, by the way. Ukraine absolutely has a right to be in NATO. Russia can say, well, I'm a bigger, more powerful country, and I'm going to try to stop you. And that's what happened. So here we have now Iran, who says, and they're not even saying that they can have a nuclear weapon, but I think that Israel has escalated their position to where they can have no nuclear exploration for any purpose at all, even if it's for peaceful purposes. And they don't even want that. All legal. They have a right to do it, the same as Ukraine had a right to join NATO. Iran has the right to do nuclear exploration. But now you have Israel and the United States so far rhetorically is backing them up. That's like, we don't like it and we're going to do something about it. And it's no different. And I know that, I've heard people try to make their arguments that this is different. It is not different. What you have is someone who's trying to do something lawful under international law, and a bigger, more powerful country or countries that are saying, we don't like it, and we're going to use our power and our might to try to stop you. And at the end of the day, just as you can see, Trump has not been able to make Vladimir stop. Okay, he's still going. And so there's not really anything that the international community can do to stop a bigger, more powerful country from bullying a smaller one. And I remember Kamala getting up and saying, a big country, right, went into a smaller country. And she's talking about the Russia-Ukraine war. And like, hello, if the United States decides to go into Iran, aren't we a big country deciding to go into a smaller country? In fact, the disparity between the size of the United States and Iran is a little bit more, but not that. It's close to being the same. If I remember correctly, pre-war, Ukraine had about 38 million people, I think I heard, and Russia has had about 140. We've got Iran with 92 million, and the disparity is not that different. So, but for us, it is bigger. It is a bigger disparity. And so I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't try to bully Iran into destroying all of their nuclear facilities. I'm not even going to get into whether or not that is safe, okay, because I don't even know. But again, right now I'm talking about the conversation. And when we talk about Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, we're not even talking about whether dropping a bunker buster bomb on a nuclear facility is safe. I haven't heard anyone talking about that. They're just like, we're going to just do it. What? One of the things that really bothers me, I feel like people can't think things through. And it really is frustrating and even scary for me at times. Because if people cannot think things through, if they're not able to ask that question, and I'm sure someone somewhere, I hope to God someone somewhere is asking it. It is a nuclear facility. If it's so dangerous that it has to be dismantled, shouldn't we take some care in how we dismantle it? As opposed to just dropping the heaviest bomb on it that we could find? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm hoping at some point someone will watch this back and they will be able to answer that question. Okay. So there's also the issue of dismantling it. All right. And I'm sorry this is a little scattered, but this has actually got me a little bit panicked because I'm like, why isn't anybody talking about this? So when we decide, we need to understand what we're doing. And the next thing I want to talk about is, okay, if Iran is following the law in their development, as far as we know, and by the way, if the United States has some intelligence that they have not shared with us that we need to know in order to make an informed decision, they're going to have to tell us that, okay? We cannot allow our elected leaders to go in secret and say, well, we couldn't tell you what that information was, because it was classified or no. If you're going to go to war, I'm tired. I am sick and tired of us protecting the sources and methods, but we're not protecting our soldiers. Okay. That we should not be doing that. If we're going to send our soldiers in potentially to die, if we're going to have lots of other people in other countries die, then I think the sources and methods, they need to make their sacrifice for the country too. Okay. Because my instinct is that that's an excuse that is used so they can lie to us, so they can get away with things that we would never otherwise allow. I have not heard anything from Trump that suggests that something has changed. And I actually made a whole separate video. It's almost an hour laying out methodically why I think that Trump is not going to be going to war with Iran. But unfortunately, the sound didn't work. So I'm going to have to redo that. But I feel a lot of confidence that we're not going to be going into it, going into this conflict. And I lay out why. And there's just certain patterns that don't fit. I don't think that at this point it really matters what Trump says. He says a lot of things. Think about how he's gone back and forth on TikTok. And by the way, I've changed my mind on TikTok. I didn't really care that much because I'm not a TikTok user, but I care about it from the point of policy. And I was not happy. And then I found out just a couple of days ago about them using people's identities to make fake driver's license. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say so? Because they passed this law. We were not provided with that information. So I know a lot of people are just reflexive, but without that information, I don't believe that it was warranted. But it is warranted with the information that we now have. And I really wish that they would have told me that. And I think that anybody should wish that, because otherwise, next thing you know, they'll be telling you that they can seize X and they won't tell you why. They'll tell you it was infiltrated by someone. And maybe that's a future administration that just wants to finally shut down free speech. And I know it's an American company, but I think that if you set a standard, the problem is that lawmakers must be operating with our buy-in. They have to have the consent of the governed. And we cannot be too lazy to demand that they inform us of what it is that we're consenting to. Otherwise, you deserve the trashy, garbage, dangerous governments that you get if you don't demand that. So it's not about whether or not they actually had a basis. They don't get to act on our behalf without our consent. It's the same thing with TikTok, which I very much feel like they did. And maybe one day I'll make a video. It's starting to come together as to why maybe they did that, but I still feel that we should not accept it. That's my view. The consent of the government, once you start compromising on that and you start pushing that envelope further and further, next thing you know, you're right back where we started. And we're barely out of the woods in terms of being governed by people that don't have our consent. We are barely out of the woods. We have to be hyper vigilant if we want to make sure that we don't backslide and start going back, and that we finish and complete the journey out of this. Essentially, it's a sunshiny totalitarian environment where our lawmakers are not acting on our behalf. They're not even acting on our consent. They're having secret meetings with people, making secret deals for secret amounts of money that has nothing to do with us. And we cannot tolerate that. So I'm sorry, it's a side note, maybe went off track a little bit. So I'm coming to the most important. If we're going to break the law, to go into a country to stop them from doing something that is lawful, then there's only one basis upon which you can do that. And that is the moral high ground. Right now, we do not have not even a little bit of moral high ground. We have no moral high ground. We're talking about doing the exact same thing that we funneled hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine so that they can stop Russia from doing it, which is to go in and execute their special military operation in order to neutralize and remove what they perceived was a threat. Okay? If right now Donald Trump is trying to go all around the world and make deals, what better way to have people not care less about your deals than to show that you will do whatever you want to do and that there's a double standard? Yes, I understand that there's some countries that feel like they need us and we have a powerful consumer base and this, that, and the other, but we don't know that it will always be that way. One of the reasons our leaders are so wicked right now is because they know they've done us so wrong. They're afraid of what we might do to them if we get the chance. I know this because I know that's how evil people work. People who don't know God, that's how they operate. They're afraid that what they have done unto others, it's going to be done unto them. And for some of you, some do, some don't, have no idea just how wicked they've actually been. So we have no moral high ground. What other basis do we have to go in? We're setting ourselves up for something very, very dangerous, because for many years after World War II, I think that America got the benefit of the doubt of the moral high ground. We do not have that right now with anyone. Even Europe doesn't think we have the moral high ground anymore. They're playing along because they need us. So there's no country in the world right now that thinks we have the moral high ground. That is a recipe for World War III. Because if no one thinks you have the moral high ground, at least when we went into Iraq, people believed us. Some, enough. Now, not only do there are 3 countries in the world that are very powerful. And from what I've seen in the last few years, I would say that either America has been underestimating the power of these of some of these other countries that are very powerful, or we have some competition. We have challengers. I'm not saying, Russia can crank out war machines at 4 times, the NATO countries together. They can crank out ammunition, I've heard, at 10 times. We've got China that they can basically cripple our ability to wage a war just by simply banning the export of raw materials. And China is in an alliance with Iran. If you don't have the moral high ground, then people will perceive your actions as wicked. And when people perceive your actions as wicked, they will risk a whole lot more in order to stop you. The way that we got people to go along with the Russia-Ukraine war was, if Russia is allowed to go into Ukraine, then they'll go into Poland. They'll go into Germany. Okay, well, I can make the same argument right now. People might be saying, if we allow America to go into Iran and destroy their nuclear weapons, next they'll be going into Pakistan. And I don't know whether or not there's many people around the world who think like that, but the problem with Russia in Ukraine is that there was really not a lot of evidence that that was true. When you look at the history, they were very, very slow to go into Ukraine. And even Trump says if he was president, it wouldn't have happened. And I actually believe that 100% to be true. So that means that there was actually a way to prevent it. He didn't go in. Now, maybe it was and maybe it wasn't, but you have to be able to look at it. There's a reason why a large portion of the world started becoming aligned with Russia and China while Joe Biden was in. I do believe that Trump is a deal maker, and I believe that he can negotiate a deal. But if we go in now without any kind of moral high ground, and if somebody thinks, if anyone sees this video and you think that we do have a moral high ground that I'm missing, and I love my country. I think we're on our way back. I think right now we will never, ever as we are right now again. Maybe never, maybe in the next 100 years, but every day under Trump's leadership, we do get stronger. And part of us getting stronger is rebuilding our credibility. I know they like to say that Trump ruined our credibility in the world in his first term, but that's obviously not true. And building credibility with people, Trump came into office in 2017 with everything against him. Everything was against him. And he made friends all around the world. Sometimes you can't make friends with people. You can't make friends with people whose only purpose is to use you for something. It's very difficult to make that kind of codependent relationship into a friend. But Trump made good friends with Saudi Arabia and a lot of the other countries in the Middle East. I know people think it's all about money. That's absurd. When people who don't have money don't understand people who have a lot of money. People who have a lot of money, everything that they do is not about money. It's just not. And nobody ever talks about George Soros doing everything that he does for money. He spends all this money. No one questions it. He's doing it for power, something that money by itself can't buy. He's playing a chess game. He's moving pieces. That's much more powerful. I keep saying this, and I'm going to say it again. Everybody needs to go and read the story, The Fisherman and His Wife. And if you read that, you will understand how, there's good and evil in all kinds of different things that you can take on. And so it shows how you get to the point where just material things, just whatever you can buy is not enough. And there's many instances of this all over. It's kind of like David in the Bible. He could have had any woman he wanted, but instead he took Bathsheba and had her husband killed. Okay, well, he couldn't find somebody else that was just as pretty. No, he was obsessed with that one that was not available. So when people get that rich, money is not enough. If they still have ambitions, it's not just about making money. But people who don't have a lot of money, or people who didn't make their money honestly, don't really understand that. Some do, but a lot don't. So they just assume, people who are greedy and are willing to do things that are shady in order to get money, assume that about other people. It deserves a whole video on its own. So there's no evidence of that. Trump has lost money trying to make America great again, a lot of money. I don't think this is going. I think that his family will never be able to do as much business as they could have done and make as much money as they could have made because Donald Trump became president. I truly believe that. And maybe they won't want to. I don't know. But regardless, there will be people in the world that will, as long as they live, hopefully we'll be able to outlive them. As long as they live, they will resent him for taking away their power. And so I don't see that there's any benefit. His entire family is in danger. Trump cannot mess up. He can't mess up. So back to the Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz interview. When the reason that Tucker Carlson's interview is so critical is because when you're making a decision and it's based on the moral high ground, we already have no moral high ground. We make it even less if we don't thoroughly consider the moral consequences to our country, the people of our country, our soldiers, to Iran, the people of Iran and their country. If you don't take all of that into consideration, thoroughly think through all the alternatives, thoroughly think through all of the potential consequences, like how bad can it be? And is there another way? We ask the question, why can't Iran have a nuclear weapon? Listen, I think that most people would agree that we would really like to be rid of nuclear weapons completely. But it brings a whole nother level when Israel has nuclear weapons. I just don't believe that Trump is that guy. I don't. I believe that Israel, Trump could say to Israel, you know what? You guys are both going to have to denuclearize. None for Iran, none for Israel. And Israel, we will still continue to protect you. And so aside from the fact that I think most people would agree that nuclear weapons, we need to try to find a way to get rid of them, if it's possible. I don't know if it is. I think that we've done pretty good by managing to not use them. No one has used them. Many countries have them now. North Korea's got them. No one stopped them. And you could very well argue that the reason that no one stopped North Korea from getting their nuclear weapons is because they didn't have an antagonist the way that Iran does. Of course, South Korea didn't want it, but they were not doing the kind of provocations that I think that I see. No one was coming and testifying from South Korea. Let me know if I'm wrong. No one was coming from South Korea to testify to our Congress, to tell us, on our airways that we had to stop North Korea from getting a nuclear weapon. I don't remember it. Maybe I'm wrong. So I'm going to try to redo the video where I discuss why Trump is not going to be getting involved in this war. I think it's not even a question. And I am very curious to what you have to say in the comments if you're watching this video. Moral high ground. Are we asking the right questions? Are we demanding the right answers? What's our moral authority? One last thing about moral authority. The last 4 years, the United States was overthrown by a hostile power. We don't even know who it was yet. No one in their right mind would make a deal with a country that can be overthrown in that manner. Nobody. And I'm going to answer this call because it keeps coming back. And so until we deal with that, I think that we're just going through the motions of some of these deals. And it looks like we're getting there. We're getting there. So I don't know what else to say, but I mean, during the last 4 years when Joe Biden was in office, I would have liked nothing more. I wanted him gone. I'm sure you wanted him gone too. He was ruining the country. And at some points, it was so bad. I was like, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to fix this? We're never going to be able to fix this. But there was not any time, no point in time during the Biden years did I want another country to come into the United States, storm our beaches, parachute into our cities, and overthrow Joe Biden for us. I never wanted that. I was like, I will fight it out myself. The last thing I want is a bunch of, Chinese soldiers coming in. Like, we'll take him out. They might have wanted him there. But anybody, it could have been anybody. And so if we don't want that, I think it's arrogant and condescending to the Iranian people to suggest that they would want that, especially given the disaster that has caused in other countries. I kind of feel like, they're looking at Syria right now and they're like, oh, hell no. No. I don't know how you say that in Farsi, but like, no. And anyone in this country who can look at Iraq, look at Syria, look at Libya, and think that they are waiting for us. Well, right now, their country's a hot mess. Why don't they overthrow their leadership now? Why not overthrow them now? But they're not doing that because they don't want terrorist groups to take over in their country. They may have things that they want, just like we had things that we wanted. But nobody wants another country coming in. No one in their right mind wants another country coming in, overthrowing their government, and then just seeing where the chips will fall. It's cruel, it's evil, and the United States should reject it. If you like this video, please comment, share, hit the like button. Again, I'm doing this video. I'm not really very good at live streaming now, but I find that it's an easier way to actually make the video and put it out there for people to watch later than to record it. So I'm recording the video. Hopefully people will see it. And I'm going to try to figure out how to change the title so people will know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about whether or not the United States has the moral high ground to go into Iran or not. That's all for this video. I will see you in the next one. I'm working very hard on putting together all of my notes for the video that I have to redo without the sound, which is why I believe that Donald Trump will not be going into Iran. And it's not even a question. He's already made the decision. He's not going in. But right now, he's running a separate operation to protect our people there for good reason. And I want to make a separate video about that. And I'd like to get it done tonight. So that's all for this stream. And I will see you on the next one.